Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge.
After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort.
No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips, get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today.
Coming up on the Payoff, it's not every day you get the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys to tell you his story of recovery, but today that's what we got. Quincy Carter was a starter for the Cowboys for about 3 seasons. He played football for Georgia, was one of the best football players in the country. Before that, he was drafted 52nd overall in the Major League Baseball draft. But shortly after he picked up a baseball and a bat, he picked up marijuana too, and he talks about from that day forward, his whole life was different, and his life spiraled out of control. He was cut by the Cowboys in 2004. Some of that was connected to drug use, or maybe all of it, you would say, was connected to drug use, and it got worse from there. But today, it is much, much better. I actually saw Quincy get his 2-year chip in Austin last summer, so I knew he was back in the mix. And boy, is he in the mix big time. So you're going to love this story. It is a very humble, genuine guy, and he talks about being authentic, and Quincy Carter is 100% authentic. So let's get to Quincy Carter, but first, my main man, Kevin Souza.
Carter from the gun. 3 receivers to the right. 3-man rush. Carter surveys. Deep, finds his man, hits him, and that's Antonio Bryant.
Unbelievable to throw that Quincy Carter makes there.
So you were born in Chicago, but you moved to Atlanta when you were how old?
3.
Okay, so you have not much memory of growing up in Chicago, if any at all, right?
No, just the summer times with my grandparents till I was about 13 years old when I really started playing a lot of travel baseball during the summertime.
You grew up in Decatur, and that's not an easy life. How fast did you have to grow up?
Back then, the neighborhood was different. In my neighborhood, it was low income. I felt like as a kid growing up that, my mom provided everything that I needed. But, there was a lot of protection around the neighborhood, too. Back then, things that guys were getting into, we were being encouraged to stay out the streets, get in the house, get your books, and things of that nature. And so it was a protection type deal, too, with some of the older guys in the neighborhood, man. And, we like to play a lot of throw-up tackle. We had a big field in the middle of our apartment complex. And so we spent a lot of time out there in those fields and playing basketball and stuff like that. And I was a rec ball kid growing up. So right off the school bus, I got off at Gresham Park, where I played baseball, football, and basketball to start my younger years of sports.
How fast did you know that you were going to be an exceptional athlete? Like around what age?
Well, I tell you, I played with a lot of great athletes coming out of Gresham Park.
Who's the best? Who's the best one that people would know about?
That people know about who I've played against. Well, there's a few, man. I had Patrick Paz. He played at Tucker. Yeah, Hassan Graham. He came up before I did with the New England Patriots. I had a couple guys that didn't really make it to the NFL, but were just exceptional, high school and college football players. Jerome Weeks was a guy I looked up to, playing quarterback, went to McNair High School. Chip Hooks was a legendary running back.
And you're from this huge talent pool. So you kind of almost you don't even know how good you are.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started to excel in baseball first. Yeah. I really took off in baseball. I spent a lot, all my summers from 3 to about 12, 13 up in Chicago with my grandparents during the summertime. But when I was 13, I got elected to play for the East Cobb Astros. And I played 75 to 100 games every summer in baseball. And so my baseball started to take off. I started to get recognition in football not until really my junior year.
Because they saw you pitching, right? They saw you got a cannon. The gods came down and touched your arm, right? When you were younger, you could throw lasers, man.
They really did. And I really started to excel out in center field too. And I love playing it. I was looking up, we had the old Nintendo games. So, Vince Coleman and Willie McGee, those guys. Yeah. Out in the outfield. Even though, it's weird. I was a Cubs fan, growing up, but I just love those guys' speed and, the way they, ran the bases and then played exceptional in the outfield, and then always, driving in runs and making sure I emptied the bases when I got up to bat. Is baseball your first love? Is baseball your first love? Absolutely, it was. Absolutely. Now that $450,000 I got out of high school didn't hurt the decision. So you get drafted by the Cubs, right? Like 52nd overall. Out of high school. Let's get to the the meat of the conversation. I want to check in with you on this. How much is alcohol and drugs involved while Quincy Carter is separating himself as an exceptional baseball player and ultimately football player in high school? Man, something, I made the ultimate mistake of smoking weed and drinking. One time we was doing this little deal in the parking lot, one of our elementary schools. I was a sophomore, and I never forgot that high I got from smoking weed. But that was periodically, and then we were hit and miss on that. And I'm talking once or twice a year. But now when I went off to play baseball, that's when we really became prevalent in my life. I was away for the first time. I'm a natural mama's boy because I'm the only child. Okay. So man, I was lonely. I was, my first stop was down in Fort Myers, Florida. And man, I took off like a rocket in rookie ball. And then I just hit a wall, and partly because I started doing things off the field that didn't allow my body to continue to perform. And then when I went up to Rockford, Illinois for my first full season, that's when we really took off for me, man. And to be honest with you, man, I thought it was a friend to escape, whether or not, I made the right decision of playing baseball, being away from my mom and family for the first time ever in my life for such a long period of time. And I developed that habit right then and there. But yeah, it went away just slightly when I got ready to start preparing for football. So you're in Illinois. You're playing baseball, and you're hitting like 130, 140, right? You said I've heard you say it was freezing cold. And all of a sudden, you were one of the biggest prospects in the state of Georgia. You were probably the biggest prospect in the state of Georgia. You were high school player of the year in Georgia. And so all of a sudden football starts to become appealing. You'd already committed to Georgia Tech before baseball, but then you end up going to Georgia.
Was that? Let me ask you this: was that change? Because I know you're a sober guy now, and you're a 12-step dude like me. Was that one of those changes, like wherever we go, there we are? Where you're like, man, I got to get out of this, and then you go to football, and it's kind of like you're just trying to a geographical cure, or maybe a career cure.
Yeah, a little bit. I think maybe that was a factor too, but honestly, at the time, I'm thinking that I don't even have a problem at that point. But when I can go back and look at it, I really did. I go back to a time that I got suspended for a fight with a teammate. And so I was suspended for about 3 games, and I pretty much had to sit on the bench.
This is in the minor leagues?
Minor leagues. Yeah, maybe warm up the left fielder. But before the games, I was going out in the parking lot, because I knew I wasn't going to play. And I was going out in the parking lot with one of the field crew guys and smoking weed and coming back in the, in the clubhouse like nothing had happened, smelling like straight weed and, taking a shower just to sit on the bench, man. So, when I go back and look at things like that, it was like, whoa. But going to Georgia, it really changed my mindset. It changed my focus. I hired a trainer that second full season in baseball. And basically I was working out in the morning times, throwing and lifting. And then in the evenings, about 3-4 o'clock, I would go to the ballpark or whatever and play baseball. So that weed kind of subsided on me. I had a trainer with me who was from Decatur. And so, I always was kind of a closet junkie and didn't really, want people to know what I was doing. And that stayed with me up until about the 5th game when we lost to Tennessee. We were 4-0 my freshman year.
Yeah, so by the way, you're underselling it. You go to Georgia, and you start in the SEC as a freshman. I mean, right away.
Yeah.
So it's like you athletically, you hear this statement. I mean, clearly you had a tougher upbringing, the area you grew up in, but like born on third base, thought you hit a triple, right? Like you had this incredible athletic ability. You bounced from minor league baseball, where you were the 52nd pick overall, to the SEC. You're starting as a freshman in the SEC. That never happens. It had been like 50 years since it happened at Georgia.
Yeah, especially back then.
Yeah.
But I really prepared myself. Like I said, man, I got at it during the summertime right before I went to training camp and really prepared myself. I had the playbook with me and everything. And when August hit, man, I was ready to go and really prepared myself. And so
you're kicking ass out there, like
Hey, I got off to a great start. We went down to Baton Rouge and beat them on the road, which, was really tough to play down there. Still is to today.
What's that like, Quincy? Let me ask you a football question. You walk in there as a freshman, and you're going to play at LSU. What the hell is that like? What is that experience like? And you're the quarterback.
Well, back in high school, man, I had a lot of buddies who wanted to, play. We all wanted to play Division I football, so we would go to some games with recruiting and everything. But to be actually on that field, man, it was just it was really, man, a feeling that you can't even describe. To be honest with you, we walk out the locker room. And that's when Mike the Tiger used to be on the field, actually. And so we walk out the locker room. Here's this goddamn tiger from Africa sitting outside the locker room, growling, and your skin is just crawling. But the craziest sound and noise I've probably ever heard in my life is when LSU would score, and literally, like, your body would just be shaking, and you can feel just the whole stadium just kind of rocking a little bit, like it was a goddamn earthquake. And I've actually been in one in California, and so that
you can compare them.
Man, that feeling that I'm describing is so real. But man, that atmosphere was electric, man. It's something, man, that, is really a dream come true, to be honest with you. But you just, that night, man, I can remember, very vividly. I was in a zone, I was really zoned out. I was really prepared. I knew exactly what they wanted to do on first, second, and third down. All my looks checked out, and it's one of these moments, that I look back of clarity. It's one of those moments that I knew I was sober too. It's so deep that, the feeling that and the thoughts that I'm having right now is that everything was so clear.
Yeah.
We lose that. We come back home and we lose to Tennessee. We got our butts beat 22-3. And I never forget, man, the feeling that I had of really, for the first time, not having success, I would say in probably, heck, 6-7 months or what have you, because I actually had a pretty good summer that summer playing baseball too. I think I ended up hitting about 260, I think, maybe something like that, but it was decent. And that feeling, of dang, what do I do? Well, my instincts went back to the feeling that took everything away from me. And that was weed, man. And I started smoking. I remember getting drunk that night, too. And then that's when the roller coaster started again. And so it was periodically, I say I wouldn't smoke, past Thursday. Well, after about 2 or 3 weeks of that, next thing you know, before we go to the movies or whatever on Friday night, now I'm getting high just to relax. And so it was a up and down swing the rest of the season. And to be honest with you, my performance was like that. I wasn't as clear as I was that LSU game when I was seeing everything and reacting to everything, but I was blessed with so much athletic ability and just so much God-given talent to throw the football. I was able to get away with some things, but it wasn't, honestly, the guy I compared to is the Cam Newton zone.
Yeah.
When that freshman, well, whatever year that was for him at Auburn. Yeah. When they won the national championship and he won the Heisman.
It's 2010, right? Yeah.
Zone. Oh my God. He stayed in that zone, dude, for 6 months, dude. That was unbelievable to watch him perform like that. And I could have had the same type results, man. I had all the ability in the world. But that's how college went. Sophomore year, I come into my sophomore year and the same thing. I revert back to what I did before my freshman year. No smoking, no drinking. I got the boys going. And who did we lose to first? I want to say we lost to Tennessee again.
Okay.
That first loss that season, I think. And the same thing goes on again, man. I run back to what I think is taking pressure off, and I can relax a little bit. And my habit, man, just couldn't turn off.
Anybody around the school, like, who's your coach? Jim Donnan was your coach?
Yep, Jim Donnan.
Anybody on the staff or any of your boys? Anybody like, hey, like you're starting to smoke more, and anybody telling you to put the brakes on, or are you so successful that you're kind of in an environment where people aren't enabling you?
Bingo, bingo, bingo. You are the winner. You just hit it right there.
Yeah.
You just hit it right there. And, Coach Donnan, we never had a conversation about it. I had a coach, though, Coach Perry, though. That's my dude. We still talk to this day. And he's the running back coach, man. And I never forget him being the one that always had a little side, conversation with me like, hey, you're not fooling me, right? Like I'm sitting around watching this.
Yeah.
And, I joke about it. But honestly, man, it really stopped my greatness. And then eventually, we get into the Cowboys days, and
let's get into the Cowboys days. So you get drafted by the Cowboys in the second round, and you got hurt, right? You're going into this draft, so you didn't think you were going to get drafted on the first day. Even you get picked in the second round. People said the Cowboys maybe could have gotten you later, but now all of a sudden you're going to be the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. That's got to be a heady thing, and you're really Jerry Jones's guy. Apparently, he pulled the trigger and was the one who wanted you the most.
Heck yeah, man! It was a blessing. Rest in heaven to my former agent Eugene Parker.
Sure.
Who passed on us back in 2016. Man, that was my guy. But leading up to the draft, it wasn't a whole bunch of teams that was going to pick me early. Now, one of the things that started to get out was my habits. I'm not sure who done it, but people, the NFL scouts and teams found out that that I was a smoker in college, and so I had a lot of questions going into the draft.
How do you answer those as a young man? Like when teams are interviewing you, do they ask you about that?
Yeah, they did. I told them there were some things that that I was doing. Being a young guy, but those things are behind me. But a lot of teams, kind of looked at it and frowned upon it. So the Raiders were still really heavy on me. The Ravens actually was too. And then you had the Cowboys, and I think there was a couple of others out there. But, man, what was real hurtful, I'll be honest with you, my own hometown team didn't even interview me at the draft. Yeah, the Falcons. Now, I'll be honest with you. There was a guy they was really, really thinking about named Michael Vick. So I get it. I get it.
We'll get back to this conversation in a second, but right now, a word from our sponsors.
The all-new Chevy Colorado is made for more. Stacked with the latest in-vehicle technologies like a class-leading 11-inch diagonal center touchscreen and an extra-large wireless charging pad. Plus, it features wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to make staying connected easy wherever your adventure takes you. Chevy Colorado, made for more. Learn more at Chevrolet.com/truck/Colorado. Claims based on latest competitive data.
Before the season now, all three of us, and when I say the third guy is Drew Brees, we were all right there in the thick of things to get drafted pretty high.
I mean, you were thought to be a Heisman candidate going into the season. I mean, there was a ton of heat around you.
Yeah, it was, man. And we had a great team too, by the way. But we got out the gates against South Carolina. It was the second team, and then Charlie Strong, he decides that he wants to throw this new defense at me, this 3-5-3 that became really popular in the early 2000s. He threw that thing at me, and let me tell you, I didn't know what I was seeing. I threw an interception to a defensive lineman, a defensive end, a linebacker, a safety, and a corner. I threw an interception at every position on the field.
You threw 5, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It was crazy. And then, once again, right after that game, what do I go back to? Yeah. I went right back to it, because that's the way I was releasing stress.
So how's the stress level when you get to Dallas?
Well, you know something, I got to be honest with you. I was so focused on proving that I belong in the NFL. I didn't realize the value of what the Cowboys were, until really about 2009. This was after football. And I'm like, wow, man, people still, keep talking about the Dallas Cowboy quarterback.
Yes.
So my pressure was more on me proving that I could, that I belonged in the NFL. Now I did hear the Troy Aikman noise. I mean, that was just.
Well, you were basically the next quarterback. Tony Banks was in between you and Troy Aikman, but I mean, you were the guy.
Absolutely,
you were the guy.
Yeah, but that was a 2-week period.
Yeah.
Him being in between me and Troy.
Yeah.
Because, we released Tony Banks a couple weeks in the training camp, and I ended up starting that third preseason game, which all the starters start. All the starters play about a half. And I got off to a little rocky start there, but then, I ended up getting hurt, which was really, to be honest with you, my rookie year was the best thing for me. I tore my hamstring and missed about 6 or 7 games. But anyway, going back to the pressure answer, I was so, focused on me sticking and staying in the NFL that, that star on my helmet didn't overexceed that. To be honest with you.
And so when you start, are you still smoking? Obviously, because you fail a couple drug tests.
Yes.
And so what happens there when you fail those drug tests and kind of people are looking at you now?
Well, honestly, I didn't fail a drug test for the NFL until going into my second year.
Okay.
Yeah, my rookie year, and yes, I started back smoking, but my rookie year, once I got hurt, here's a time when my back was against the wall, and I said, hey, we got to shape up and handle our business. So I did not smoke the whole time when I was hurt. And
wow.
leading up to getting myself back healthy. And then as soon as I thought, I can handle things, and I win a couple games when I come back off injury, here I am, trying to be Joe Cool and putting things into my life that had no place. Anyway, so that second off season, now this is where my addiction really, truly showed up. And I didn't know it. Okay, how we get tested in the NFL back in those days, you get tested at OTAs, which was mini camps for us, which they kind of do it now, I think, too.
Uh-huh.
So you get tested by position groups. Receivers and DBs might get tested at one, the next one, defensive lineman, offensive lineman, what have you. So I was the last group to get tested, and it was quarterbacks and the kickers. I knew going into training camp that I was going to get tested, and I waited almost until like maybe 3 or 4 days before training camp. Tried to use some masking agent when they told us the night before we was going to be getting tested in the morning, and ended up failing that test. So that's the test that put me in the drug program. And then I didn't fail another one until I failed that one before 2002 season, and I didn't fail another one until right before training camp in 2004.
Did you have we talk about, obviously I'm an alcoholic and I have all kinds of that's alcoholic personality stuff, feeling less than and all that kind of stuff that I would use alcohol and drugs to make go away. Did you start to feel any of that? Cause you're a Dallas Cowboy. And like you said, you're trying to prove that, they made the right decision and that you could exist in the NFL. Did you notice that like with any of the usage, like the drinking or the smoking?
Absolutely. I started to develop that me against the world, type attitude, I would say, when I got hurt in college, because I had to sit up and listen, to a very, how can I describe this? Very vibrant and opinionated fan base at the University of Georgia, man. Let me tell you, we got the best fans in the world, but they'll let you know their opinions too, and they love their dogs. And so I was hurt. So I didn't, get my mind off the things that was going to be positive at all times. So I started to develop that me against the world mentality then. I started listening to guys, and I was feeding off of it too.
Yeah.
I started listening to guys, saying that I wasn't going to be an NFL quarterback and I'm not going to get drafted and this and that. So that me against the world mentality, that started to play a role when I got to the NFL. But, man, the man up above, it's kind of hard to put it like this, but hey, with me getting hurt, it opened up my eyes a little bit. Like, wait a minute, who's in charge? Who's in charge here? I got your back anyway. And God was showing me so many different ways, man, throughout my whole life, that He's had me. But let me have this. We talk about it in step 3. Give me this will. That's what God is saying to me. All right, it's mine and it's not yours. But anyway, so
is it hard when you're a superstar athlete because you can handle everything, right? You think, and so so the last thing you're going to do is give it to God, right? Because it's like, I got this. I'm Quincy Carter.
But here's the thing. Now I'm a 14-year-old freshman in high school, and I'm scared out my mind and fearful that I might not win this starting job, because I had a pretty good quarterback with me who was in the same grade as I was, and now I'm fearful that I might not get in that starting job. And I'm on my knees. I'm developing my relationship with God. He's giving me everything I need as far as the strength and the wisdom to deal with everything. And then I get a little bit older, and my britches, get a little bit too big for me, and then I forget about who gave me everything and the athletic ability and everything like that.
Dude, that's just what we do in recovery sometimes, right? Like we stop drinking, we stop using, life gets better, and they're like, okay, I'll take it from here.
Yeah, I did that so many times coming out of rehab.
Yeah,
so many times, and God said, "Bro, sit down somewhere."
So how did you end up in rehab the first time? Like, what was, because I know I was watching something, and the first conversation you had with Bill Parcells is when you were in rehab.
Yeah, when I was in rehab, that was my first time. Yeah, that 2003 season. Because I was all out of control. I ended up losing my job midway through the season because I was in an evaluation process with the NFL. And so basically you can still smoke until they tell you, hey, all right, the evaluation period is over. Now these tests going to start counting. They give you a couple to clean your system, whatever. But that never happened. And so after the season, Jerry sat me down and was like, hey, man, you got to get some help. All right, or you're not going to be playing football for us anymore. And so,
was he a good influence? Like a good? I know. I remember one thing I want to touch on is you literally. I mean, and this shows the balls that we have as active alcoholics. You got into an argument with him. Correct me if I'm wrong. on the sidelines during the game, not the quarterback's coach, not the offensive coordinator, not the head coach, the owner.
With the owner. And here's the catch-22. All right, I'm laughing about it now, but it's not that funny. It's very ignorant. But hey, we can take a laugh at it.
Of course, man. I would say we're sober today, and so we can have if we weren't sober, it wouldn't be funny. But you can look back now, and it got you to where you are, which is a pretty good place.
Yeah, great place. But yeah, so I done threw 4 picks, and I was splitting reps with Chad Hutchinson during the week, and it wasn't. It was very unprecedented. But honestly, looking back, hindsight, okay, the owner knows I'm still smoking. My demeanor, attitude, everything is not the same. Or the guy that he drafted me. So yeah, he's gonna get a guy prepared, to play when I'm sitting around doing some of the things I'm doing. So I'm pissed. I done threw 4 picks, and I went over here to him and said, hey, if you want me to be the quarterback you want me to be the quarterback of this team, man, I need to be getting no one should be splitting reps with me with the first team in practice, because I'm not getting enough reps. And then I can't tell you exactly what he said to me. But then me and him had words going back and forth, and I look back at that like, are you serious, bro? Like, you're the one who got yourself in the drug program, and so now I want to go pointing fingers because this man runs the most important franchise in sports, period, and still to this day. And he's got to get somebody else prepared because he knows that you're doing some things off the field that ain't helping his franchise where he's making billions of dollars off of.
Yo, that's the insanity. That's the insanity.
That's the insanity right there.
That is.
And so hey, listen, that morning I got called into that office, Coach Campo, who, we speak to this day too, man. That's my dude.
Dave Campo was the head coach then, yeah.
Yes, and he let me know, hey, buddy, we're going to have to sit you down, and you got to look at some things in your life right now that are stopping you from your greatness. And so after the season, that's when I went to rehab to, basically, to be honest with you, take a hard look at my life. But I never grasped right then and there what those steps would really do for me. I didn't want to face going and telling my teammates or my friends, that, hey, I'm an addict and this is the way I got to live my life. So in the drug program, actually, in the NFL, if you didn't get a DUI or anything like that, you could drink. And so now, for the first time in my life, I did a little drinking in college, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like to be drunk like that, but I just did it for the boys and what have you. But now I'm substituting drinking, for the weed because I could drink a little bit. But I really didn't like to drink like that. But I found myself, when I did, I was drinking like I was smoking because I was already an addict and didn't know it. And so I didn't implement those 12 steps in my life, at that point in time of going to rehab. The things that were smacking me in my face in rehab, man, I wanted no parts of it. And I did not want to take a deep dive look at my life at that time. And so some of those character defects were still prevalent, although I did, I did not fail a test, per se, for marijuana, but I was substituting by drinking. But, we ended up having a decent season that year.
You went to, you go to the playoffs in 2003.
We did. That was my most clearest
Were you sober?
too.
Were you sober for most of that season, or you were drinking?
Well, I can't say I was sober because, I would periodically be drinking too. So, but now drinking wasn't like my marijuana usage. Like, I wasn't going to be just sitting around sipping on a fifth during the middle of the week, or I wasn't the guy who was going to go out on Friday nights because we knew Saturday was going to be just a walkthrough. You know what I mean? I wasn't that kind of drinker at that time. Now, I became a heavy drinker later.
Yeah, well, I want to get to your recovery, but I got a couple more things about this before we get to your bottom. And you're like me, you had a couple of them, right? But were you smoking weed, like going to the facility when you were able to get away with it?
Not in the NFL, and really not in college. Okay. I was an after practice guy, smoker. Now periodically during the off season, I would smoke just to go lift and run, which sounds crazy, don't it?
Yeah. Motivation.
I gotta go work out and use my lungs and then go run 100-yard sprint. But hey, I'm gonna go smoke before I do that, so it can help me out. Yeah, right. But no, I wasn't a go to the facility smoker. But after, it's when, I kind of in my own kind of space, that's when kind of things went down.
So in your words, you kind of get into a free fall when in the off season you guys make the playoffs, and then in the off season, Vinny Testaverde, I guess at some point in training camp, joins the Cowboys, and you didn't respond to that terribly well, and then you get cut. Before, I remember, like, shit, Quincy, I remember where I was. When you reading that, when you that was a huge deal. And nobody really knew what the story was behind that. But Bill Parcells cuts you. What was the reasoning behind that?
A couple things. One, the test really did play a big factor into me getting cut. You know, we had what do we have? We had a scrimmage that Saturday. It was like the first scrimmage of training camp, and it was on that Saturday. Right before, not right before, but right after, right after we got to training camp.
Okay.
And the deal was they didn't want me to scrimmage because they thought I knew enough of the playbook. And so I was pretty pissed about that.
Yeah.
So after the scrimmage, we're watching the film and everything, and Sean, and I put my head on the desk, and Sean Payton was like, "Hey, you're not going to watch this film." And I said, "No, I'm not on it," like an idiot. And I'll never forget Sean Payton. Me and David Lee talk about this story a lot. But Sean Payton runs out the meeting room and went to go talk to Bill about what was going on. And so Bill did not say anything to me, to be honest with you, that night. But that next morning, man, I think they knocked on that door about 5:30 in the morning, and brought me to Jerry's office, and Jerry let me know the most fatal information I've ever got. Besides, I would say, a couple hard deaths in my life. Yeah. But he let me know that he was going to have to let me go. So the test was already failed, though, before I went to training camp. That was already failed. But now I'm looking at a 4-game fine for the first 4 weeks. And then now you're putting your head on the desk, acting like a little kid after, what they had already seen before. We can go back to the sideline altercation and stuff like that. And Jerry had enough, man.
It speaks to your athletic ability that you stuck around for that long. I mean, really, it does, Quincy.
Well, I was blessed. But here's the thing, and you just alluded to a little while ago about it not being enough. I go to the playoffs. My life is really turning around. Yeah, I was doing a little drinking. But, for the most part, I thought, hey, this is, probably the best I've been in, mentally, emotionally, without, going into my me against the world mentality when I smoked at that time. But I wanted that feeling back so bad. And so what do? I go out and buy a Wizinator. It's April, May of the off season. I go out and buy a Wizinator. And so I had been passing a test like that for 3 or 4 months. Let me tell you this. Now, this is the crazy part. I decided that I wanted to go back and being straight sober. Hey, we're not going to use this thing because it was wrecking me mentally. Can you imagine going around trying to collect piss and go try to pass?
It's a typical addict thing to do, right? And you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
God. Yes, absolutely. So that had been going on for 3 or 4 months, and now I decide, hey, I want to go clean. I go to the Bahamas. I get all cleaned up. Come back, take a few tests first. One of my guys, I won't put him on blast or whatever, worked at a hospital. But man, we're dealing with, Olympic testing with the NFL. So I go clean finally. And the one time I go clean, that's the test I failed. Unbelievable.
And so you're looking at a 4-game suspension. You put your head on the desk, and and so you get cut in that summer or that training camp of 2004. Then what happens? Because that's when it just kind of hits that, like we say in AA, that jumping off point. What starts to happen? You start to use other drugs, cocaine, all that stuff. It's funny, and I don't say this honestly to try to combat
my drug history. But when it first came out, everybody said I failed my test for cocaine. Well, that came in at a later date, for me. But I was tinkering around with ecstasy a little bit, but it was hit or miss.
So was everybody else in your defense at that time, right? Yeah.
Say that again?
I said, so was everybody else at that time. I was a big ecstasy guy. I mean, now we're addicts, so we're different, but yeah, that stuff was everywhere. If you were around the wrong people, I was about to say right people.
Exactly. But yeah, so my depression though, up in New York, man, I never forget, man, really started, to hit me, man. When I was up in New York, that was by far the most miserable time.
So you're playing for the Jets?
Man, yes. That was the most memorable time, man, I can say, when my depression really started, to take toll on me. And I was, man, it was so bad that I never even looked for an apartment. I never looked for a house. I literally stayed in a Marriott, extended stay type hotel with, with a little sofa, what have you, the bed. And that's how I lived for 5 months, man.
Like right in like the Meadowlands or like down in the city?
No, I see back then, we were still in Long Island.
Oh, that's Hofstra. Right. Okay. By Hofstra.
So that's where we practiced. So I was off the LIE somewhere.
Somewhere. In Hempstead.
Yeah, exactly. No, literally.
Okay.
Off the LIE somewhere. I don't even remember the exit or anything.
So what kind of stuff were you doing off the field? Because you ended up starting a little bit for the Jets, but you're just in free fall now?
I'm in free fall, but I'm literally coming back home. It wasn't no studying because I stayed up at the complex enough to, make sure that I knew what the other opposing team was doing and in our game plan. But I'm coming back home, man, and I'm drinking probably 3-4 days out the week, man, just to really get by and pass time. And it went like that, man. That whole season. I did not break down all the way until the last game of the season. We had played the Chargers that night before. I never forget. I honestly, man, I wanted it all to end, but we kick a late field goal and we win. And man, I could not just emotionally take it anymore, man. It was draining me from, and then at the time, I added some more, us addicts, man, we just can't have a little bit, going on. We want to add some more.
Yeah.
And so I asked my girlfriend at the time, I asked her to marry me. And so I added that stress along with me on Christmas, man. And, God bless her heart, man. She was a great woman, too. But at the time, man, you can imagine.
Oh, see, we take hostages, man.
Dude, I couldn't even take care of my. What you just say that again.
We take hostages, man.
We take hostages with us, so you can try to feel bad for us too.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. To be honest with you, I couldn't even take care of myself. How am I going to take care of this beautiful woman too? And with all this insecurity I'm feeling anyway. So I add that to my life. But that last game, we came back from San Diego. It's early in the morning, 7:30, 8 in the morning, and man, I just got to it all day. But the next day, the drug test man called me, that night, and at the time, I was doing pills at the time and drinking, and so he called me that night.
What kind of pills?
Hey, he'll be there. Well, ecstasy pills.
Okay.
And so that night he called me back, and And well, he called me and told me that he'll be there in the morning. And so I knew right then and there, there's no way I can pass this test in the morning. And so I had to call my agent and let him know, man, hey, this is what's up. I don't know what I'm going to do, but there's no way, that I can fail this test or even try to take it. And so, man, I stayed actually in Long Island, but I had to tell the piss man that I was going home because, I couldn't, get the
Did you make up? Did you do like a typical addict thing? Did you make up like a family emergency or something? Or
yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest lies I really want to take back to this day. But hey, I was in survival mode. And so anyway, I come back from my little hiatus, which I didn't go anywhere, by the way, but I come back from my little hiatus, and I come back to practice on Thursday.
Because you guys were in the playoffs.
Yeah, but we played on Saturday. And so we had to practice that Tuesday anyway. So we got the day off on Monday because, usually you get Tuesdays off. We got the day off on Monday, so we got to practice that day on Tuesday. So anyway, I don't get back to Thursday. And then, I practiced and everything, but Coach Hackett at the time said I didn't know enough of the offense. And so I can't even travel on Saturday. So I didn't even travel with the team, man. And we ended up losing to the Steelers, which was a great game too, by the way. But we ended up losing to the Steelers, and that's how my season ended, with me watching the game from the hotel and not even dressing out that game.
Jesus. So then, and Herm Edwards was your head coach, right?
Say that again.
So Herm Edwards was the head coach?
Yes, he was.
And Paul Hackett's the offensive coordinator. So then it's done. So then what happens? How do we find our bottom? Because dude, that's an epic bottom right there. I mean, you just painted the picture like you're in the hotel, right?
Yeah, I think that was my first real bottom right there. Now I think I've had 5, 6 after that. But that was my first bottom. A few months later, my bottom, another bottom hit when Herm Edwards, man, told me, and this is late February, I guess, and he told me right then and there, right before the free agent signing period in March, to sign back with those guys. I had some serious allegations out there of what I was doing off the field. He didn't feel like nobody was going to sign me, but he really wanted me back, man. And I just, was too young and dumb to realize what I was facing, and thought that, I could get signed in free agency. But I also had another deal going on behind closed doors, and I was really trying to prove a point of really getting my money from my grievance hearing.
Yeah.
Because I was real upset at the time. I, was sitting up blaming the world about this and that. And me and the NFLPA thought that the Cowboys wrongfully released me because you can't, release anybody due to the drug program per se.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what happened in that press conference when Jerry said we're not releasing him because of his play, and so I had that going on too. But Herm, through hearsay or what have you, and his power and the position he was in, he knew I should sign back, and I didn't sign back. And then when I, kind of realized that I wasn't going to be on an NFL team, to start a training camp, and man, I just hit a bottom. And so that was my next time going into rehab, late in 2005. I want to say about October or what have you, was another bottom that I hit, during that first year that I realized I wasn't going to be playing in the National Football League in 2005.
When did you start working with Thomas Henderson?
Say that again?
When did you start working with Thomas Henderson with Hollywood? Because I know he's a guy that's helped you a little bit.
Yeah. This was 2007. I met. Well, actually, man, the funny thing is my mom reached out to him because she heard of his story. And so I'm in California with an ex-girlfriend. The house is gone. There's no apartment anymore in Dallas, and I'm out there with her. And I called Hollywood one day, and we got to talking, man. And he was telling me right then and there what, I had to do and surrender to this thing to really get my life back on track. But those words that I, hear so vividly today in the way I live my life, that didn't even resonate with me. What was resonating with me is I can do what I, did in 2003 when I was on that phone conversation with Bill Parcells, and I can go show face or what have you, but not surrender to this thing, and then boom, I can get myself back in the NFL. So that's what I was thinking, and that was 2007, late December.
And so you keep this thing going. When do you actually surrender? Like, when is the moment when you're like, because even sometimes we'll surrender for real, and then we will relapse. That's part of the story. But like, when did you surrender and you knew, okay, I've got to do this shit?
I'll be honest with you, not until 2017. That was my first time in California when I went out to sober out in California. My man Greg Hanley, man, really, man, shout out to my guy. Yeah, man, Greg, he brought me out there to sober. Actually, I was in San Antonio, to be honest with you, to start. And then I want to blame everybody else for the way my life been, and I almost got into a fight. And so then I went out to sober. But I really knew right then and there, this is the lifestyle that I have to live to stay sober. But here's the thing, though, and this with recovery, you got to do some work. It says it in the AA book, man. Resting on your laurels is one thing you do not want to do. And that's what happened after about 9 months. I got comfortable and thought I could just do this thing and I was going to be okay, like I had just put this thing behind me. And so I wasn't fixing my spirit on a daily basis, man, to go out here and deal with whatever life, brings to the table that day. And so that thing just started, slowly steamrolling. Now, I'm back into having conversations with the boys back home and what they're doing, and then that free fall started without even me picking up. Just my whole way, my lifestyle,
They say that, right? Like the relapse starts before the drink or the drug.
Oh, absolutely. And not, going to meetings, not doing no step work, not sponsoring anybody. And right at that about 11-month period, that's when I relapsed. And so I'm not the relapse guy that comes straight back to rehab. So I went off on a run for about, no, I'm not. Yeah. I went off on a run for about a couple years. And it was just pure hell on earth. Good God Almighty. I can go on and on telling you stories about those couple of years. But anyway, God brought me back to my knees, man, back in 2019. My guy Hollywood, I tell you the truth, man, was still there, still is to this day. I called him and I heard a message so loud and clear from him. Now, you got to get sober on your own. Yeah. Nobody can do it for you. You can't do it for anybody else. But I call him and tell him, man, I told him, I said, hey, I really, man, mean it. I got to do this thing. I know what I got to do. And he told me right clear in there, and I heard it loud and clear. He said, man, this is my last time helping you because I keep doing this, and then you keep just thinking that you can go back out here and wheel this thing yourself. You have to surrender to this thing. And so, man, I came up here to Austin where I still am today. And I haven't looked back, man. I surrendered to God. I surrendered to the program. I sponsored guys.
I saw you. So I was at that Tuesday night meeting, the AA meeting in Austin, and I saw you get your I think it was your 2-year chip last year.
Yep. Wow, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'd had Hollywood on this podcast, and I asked him, I was like, you think I can, because I wanted to ask him, I was like, you think I could reach out to Quincy? And he's like, yeah. And he's so fond of you, and he is so cool, man. I mean, he just oozes recovery and serenity, and he's calm, and his story is so compelling. He's just one of those guys, man. He's got what I want,
Yeah, you just said it, man. That calm spirit, you can just feel it, can't you? When you talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's fixing his spirit on a daily basis to deal with life, and he understands, wholeheartedly, totally that he don't run anything, and that God's in control. And man, shoot, he's lived like that for 38 years, and I'm sure, he has some issues or this and that. But
we
the
all
way
do,
he
right?
deals with it, yeah, exactly. But the way you deal with it, and the way you allow God into your life, and understanding. The biggest thing I think, one of the biggest things I think I've been able to understand and learn, and I alluded to it, a while ago in this conversation, but allowing whatever the world brings to you, whatever life brings to you, but knowing, all right, that you're not in control, and just being okay with the results. Man, that is just so beautiful, to go through something, for it not to work out in your favor, for, you have to sit up for a whole year, not drive, and get your driver's license, start over from zero. But what can you do? You can't do anything. And so how do you fix your spirit to be okay with life when it doesn't go your way? And that's one of the most beautiful things, man, I've been able to learn through this process.
How do you fix your spirit? Like when stuff's not going your way?
Well, I fix it every morning anyway by meditating. If I don't have time for that, reading one of my 24-hour-a-day books, praying, talking, calling Hollywood, calling another one of my mentors, rest in heaven, to my other guy, Skip Walker, man, he was my sponsor here in Austin, because, Hollywood lives in Florida.
Yeah.
But I fix it on a daily basis doing those type of things anyway. And then when things get tough on me, man, I refer back to what's been working for me. And I can't turn that off now. I know it works. I feel it. I love it. It's doing something for me. Why turn that button off? Why go crying like a baby? And that's one of another biggest things about, alcoholics and addicts, man. We don't realize until we really get into these steps, man, that we don't know how to deal with life when life knocks us upside the head. We deal with it by drinking or through drugs.
Yeah. That's the only way we know.
Yep.
And like you said, it's a friend for so long until it isn't.
Yeah, buddy. But you learn to start. It's almost like when you first start. When you're a baby. You start crawling first. All right, but you're doing the things because you're older now. And you're doing the things that's consciously that's going to help your whole life. Entirely. And so you just keep practicing and practicing and practicing until it just becomes a routine. And you cannot stray away from that first step experience. You got to remind yourself when it really gets tough, bruh, what was it like before I got sober? And if you can look back at that moment for whatever you're going through and then say, whoa, let me pick up this phone. If this phone don't work, let me run to a meeting. You got Zoom, 24-hour Zoom meetings out here. Let me pray. Let me meditate. But, boy, if you can just look at that first step experience, man, listen, that thing is loud and clear to you. Now just use the tools because they work. Trust me, they work.
Dude, I haven't heard anybody mention that in a while. Like, just to keep it real basic, Just remember how unmanageable it was and the shit show it was before.
What? If you can look back at that, boy, good God almighty, you can save yourself a lot of hardship, man.
All right, so look, before I let you get out of here, I got like one or two more things. You're basically, it's a nice place to be a quarterback coach, I would think, in Austin, right? So if you got prospects who are top athletes in the area, they reach out to you and you mentor them.
I do, man. And it's a God-given ability, innate ability, I'll be honest with you. I love touching lives. I'm just so proud that I don't have to look in that mirror after, because, I've been having my quarterback school for a while, but I hadn't got out there, on this level because, man, I was still running. I was fearful that they might see that guy who was getting off the field and doing whatever, off the field. So, but anyway, so I love helping people. I played the position. I naturally got, I naturally love it, just by playing it. I want it to be played the right way. I know how important it is to be a leader. I know how important the quarterback means to his whole team, his community, his whole city. And I know what that means, man. And so for me to be able to implement, what my coaches, the David Leeds, the Sean Paytons, even going back to my high school coach, Stephen Davenport and Buck Godfrey, to implement what these guys put into my life, and I can, instill it into them. Man, it's a beautiful thing. I'm blessed, man. I'm really blessed.
How has your message changed to your athletes since you've gotten sober?
Well, the message hadn't changed much. Leave drugs alone. What you got to do to be a quarterback, but the message is authentic now. The message, I can say the message and then go back and look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, something, you all right. But I could look in that mirror telling somebody to start smoking and drinking, or if I get an athlete who's starting to tinker around with weed, but then they sitting up looking in my eyes and knowing, hey, is coach doing something? Because you can't lie to these kids, man. These kids see it. So, the message I would say now is more authentic. It's more God-led. My spirit is filled. So now I can feel anything that someone may be going through. And now my spirit is right. And so I can give you what God is putting into me right away. When you're getting blocked, when you putting these things in front of, God, and I'm losing the right words.
Well, you're blocking off that sunlight of the spirit, man. When you put stuff before God.
What I'm trying to say. Yeah. When you blocking that sunlight off, you can't give it to these guys. It's not authentic.
Yeah. Last question for you. What do you tell somebody? Because I know you sponsor guys. What do you tell somebody that comes in on the first or second day and they're like, hey, man, what do I do?
Man, listen, I say this so bold and clear, and this is my go-to because it's so real. If you do not surrender to God, and don't let that block you out, but it's got to be a higher power. It's got to be something outside of yourself. Hell, it can be the AA fellowship, the NA fellowship, whatever it is. It can be that book, but it's got to be something outside yourself. If you don't surrender to God or a higher power, and if you don't thoroughly go through these steps and live this recovery life, you don't have a chance. And the other thing, the last thing, is go in that book and read chapter 3, more on alcoholism. And if that chapter don't hit you in your face and you don't realize you're an addict or an alcoholic and you do not surrender to this program or a higher power of God, you don't have a chance. And it's that cut and dry, man. And I don't even play around with it because that's so true. You got to do the hard work. You got to get through all the steps, but you really, really got to get through step 4 thoroughly and get everything out on the table. And then, man, start working on them character defects and shortcomings, make them amends, get your continuous program. We got a 10-step set up for you, where you can, it's a daily, well, not daily thing, but, you can 10-step whenever, identify the problem, show where you've been wrong in the issue, discuss it with somebody. 11, continuous prayer and meditation. And 12, man, go out and help somebody else. And hey, the main one, 3, giving your will over to a higher power of God, man. But you got to go through these steps. You got, to give that will over to God, man. You got to surrender to God or a higher power. And it's no cut. I mean, it's no way.
There's no shortcuts,
man.
And I can tell by talking to you, it's about being free. And you're free, and you're living a real attractive life.
Yeah, buddy. But you got to go through the hard work, man, and it's well worth it. And man, just go live your life. But yeah, that chapter 3, and I can't skip over the doctor's opinion too, man. That's a great read there too. But you can that thing will hit you in your face. And in step 3, I'm sorry, not in step 3, but on page 30, more on alcoholism.
Dude, Quincy, I can't thank you enough, man, for giving me this time and for being of service today. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I've been following you for a long time, so I really appreciate the time. And people like you carrying the message. When I was trying to get sober, when somebody like you was open and vulnerable, it really was attractive to me, and it enabled me to get closer to this program and finally to a solution. So, man, I thank you so much.
Man, thank you for having me. Man, I had the guy in my life years ago who was trying to tell me this long time ago. But just like it says on page 30, and I'm gonna shut up too. I'm feeling it right
this
now.
Is great.
But like it says on page 30, the delusion that we can smoke or drink like anybody else has to be smashed. Read that, man. Read it and let it bless you. All right, I'm gonna shut up.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.